किड्यान सपनों की उड़ान।
The Water of Life. Once upon a time, there was a king who was so ill that everybody thought he would die, and his 3 sons were very sorry and went out into the palace gardens to cry. There they met an old man who asked the cause of their grief, and they told him their father was so ill that he would die, for nothing could save him. The old man said, I know a means of saving him. If he drinks water of life, it will restore him to health, but it is very difficult to find. I will soon find it, said the eldest son. And going to the sick king, he begged his permission to set out in search of the water of life, which alone could save him. The king said, No, the danger is too great. I am afraid to send you out all alone. I prefer to die. Nevertheless, the son kept begging, and eventually the king had to consent. One fine day, Prince left castle and started his journey, thinking in his own heart, if I bring this water, I am the dearest to my father, and I shall inherit his kingdom. After he had ridden a long way, he met a dwarf on the road, who asked him, Where are you heading away so quickly? You stupid little man, replied the prince proudly. Why should I tell you that? And he rode off. But the little man was angry, and he wished an evil thing. So soon after, Prince came into a narrow mountain pass. The farther he rode, the narrower it grew, till at last it was so close that he could not get any further. Neither could he turn his horse around. And he sat there like one amazed. So he sat there wondering what to do. Meanwhile, the sick king waited for his elder son to come back. Days passed, but he did not come. Soon after, the second son asked king's permission to go out and find the water as well as his brother. For he thought to himself, if my brother is dead, the kingdom comes to me. At first, the king refused to spare him, but he was very concerned about his elder son and eventually asked him to leave, and eventually gave him permission to start his journey. The prince set out on the same road as the elder one had taken and met the same dwarf, who stopped him and asked, Where are you riding so fastly? Little man, replied the prince, what do you want to know for? And he rode off without even looking around. The dwarf, however, enchanted him. Eventually, the second prince also got stuck in the same mountain like his brother. He came to a place where he could not move either forward or backward. Now, when the second son did not return, the youngest begged to leave and fetch the water. The king was obliged at last to give his consent. When he met the dwarf asked the same question, where he was going so hurriedly. He stopped and replied, I seek the water of life, for my father is dying, and he is very dear to me. Do you know where to find it? Asked the dwarf. No, replied the prince. That is what I am searching for. Since you have behaved yourself as you should, and not in a rude manner like your false brothers, I will give you information and show you where you may obtain the water of life. It flows from a fountain in the court of a castle, into which you can never enter if I do not give you an iron rod and 2 loaves of bread. With the rod, knock 3 times at the iron door of the castle, and it will open. In the castle, you will find 2 lions with open jaws. But if you throw down to each a loaf of bread, they will be quiet. Then hasten and fetch some of the water of life before it strikes 12, because after 12 the door will shut again and you will be trapped. The prince thanked the dwarf, and taking the dwarf. Taking the rod and bread, he set out on his journey. As he arrived at the castle, he found exactly same things which dwarf had explained to him. At the third knock, the door sprang open, and when he entered the castle, he found 2 lions with their jaws open. He quickly gave them loaf of bread. Once they got busy eating the loaf of bread, he walked further. He entered into a large hall where sat several enchanted princes, from whose finger he drew off the ring, and he also took away with him a sword and some bread which lay there. A little farther, he came to a room wherein stood a beautiful maiden, who was so pleased to see him that she kissed him and said he had freed her. A little farther, he came into a room where stood a beautiful maiden. She was so pleased to see him that she kissed him and said he had freed her and should have her whole kingdom, and if he came another year, their wedding should be celebrated. Then she told him where the fountain of water of life was placed, and he ran on as he didn't have much time. He came next into a room where a fine, clean covered bed stood, and being tired, he laid down to rest himself a bit. But soon, because of tiredness, he went to sleep. When he woke, it struck the 11:45. The sound made him hurry to the fountain. He quickly ran towards the fountain, took some water in a cup which was kept near. Once it was done, he ran to the door and was scarcely out before it struck 12. And the door swung so heavily that it carried away a piece of his heel. But he was very glad, in spite of the pain, that he had got the water, and he started his journey towards the home castle. While travelling, he met the dwarf again. When the dwarf saw the sword and bread which he had brought away, he declared he had done well, because the sword is so mighty it could destroy whole armies, but the bread was worth nothing. Now the prince was not willing to return home to his father without his brother. So he asked Dwarf, "Dear Dwarf, can you tell me where my brothers are? They went out before me in search of the water of life and did not return. And I also assume that they met you on their way." "They are stuck fast between 2 mountains," replied the dwarf, "because they were so rude. I enchanted them there." So kids, hope you loved the story. More such stories are on your way. Tune into Kidyaan and keep listening.